What if the greatest wizard of all time didn't just see the future, but had already lived it? We picture Merlin as the wide old sorcerer of Arthur's court, calmly steering the destiny of kings. But buried inside older Welsh legends and Merlin's origins is a stranger tale, one that twists time itself. They speak of a wild prophet who wandered the forests, whispering of battles centuries away as if they were memories. To those who heard him, it seemed as though he wasn't looking forward at all. He was walking backward through history. Was Merlin a prophet, a madman, or a man cursed to live life in reverse, growing younger as the world grew older? Today on Vortex Mythology, we follow the haunting trail of the wizard who lived backwards. Subscribe if you dare to step beyond the edge of time. Long before he became the refined, courtly Merlin of Arthurian romances, scraps of Welsh poetry remembered him as Myrddin Wyllt, meaning something akin to wild, or even mad, Myrddin, or Merlin. These fragments place him in the 6th century as the bard of a northern warlord, Geoffrey ap Monmouth. But that life ended in fire and blood. In 573 CE, at the Battle of Arfderydd, Geoffrey was killed, and Myrddin saw his companions slaughtered around him. Something inside him broke. He abandoned the world of men and fled into the Caledonian Forest of Scotland, where he would wander like a ghost. For years he lived alone among the trees, barefoot, wild-eyed, wearing only leaves, speaking to birds as though they were his court, and muttering broken prophecies to wolves. Yet even in this ruin, his words chilled those who heard them. He spoke of the rise and fall of kings who had not yet been born, and of kingdoms that did not yet exist. In the oldest surviving verses, he does not call these prophecies. He calls them memories. Interestingly, in Scotland, a near-identical figure appears, Lailoken, a war-maddened prophet said to have survived the same battle and retreated into the woods. The parallels are too precise to ignore. Most scholars believe they were once the same man, split into two legends. Did you know? Some medieval chroniclers claimed Myrddin's age could never be determined, as if he was growing younger the longer he stayed in the forest. To them, it was not just madness, it was proof he had slipped out of time. This is where the story begins to warp. Not as a seer peering into mist, but as a man walking towards us from the far end of history. Prophecy is rarely a blessing. In myth, it almost always comes as a curse. Cassandra foresaw the fall of Troy and was driven mad when no one believed her. Tiresias saw too much of the gods and was blinded for it. But Merlin's burden was stranger still. Some tales hint that he didn't just glimpse the future, he remembered it, as if it had already scarred him. Imagine living like that. Every friendship already spoiled by the knowledge of where it ends. Every joy soured by the certainty it will wither. What would hope even mean, if your future felt like a past you had already endured? This might explain the madness that wrapped itself around him. Not grief for what happened in the past, but sorrow and grief for what had not yet happened, for the tragedies only he could see coming. To others, his mutterings were riddles. To him, they may have been memories that hadn't happened yet. Centuries later, this ancient whisper would resurface. In T.H. White's The Once and Future King, Merlin is portrayed as literally living backwards through time. He starts at the end of history and grows younger as the world grows older, remembering the future as though it has already passed. White's version is fiction, but it carries an older echo. The idea that Merlin's wisdom was not learned through experience, but carried from the far horizon of time. And if that is true, then he was not gifted. He was cursed to endure the world twice. After the Battle of Arfderydd, Myrddin did not return to the court of kings. He vanished into the trees. Welsh poetry paints him as living like a beast in the Caledonian Forest, barefoot, crowned with leaves, speaking to birds as companions, muttering riddles to wolves. He becomes part of an archetype older than any one man, the wild man. Across European myth, the wild man stands outside of the laws of men. He abandons the world of crowns and calendars, living in the raw wilderness where time itself seems slower, stranger, bent. If Merlin truly lived backwards, this is where he belonged. Among people who moved forward, he would have seemed alien, someone drifting towards them from a future they hadn't yet reached. To see him would have been like watching your own ghost arrive too early. Some stories frame this exile as punishment, as though living backwards was the price of seeing too much. Others treat it as initiation, that to see beyond the world you must first leave it entirely. Local peasants feared even saying his name aloud, believing it might call him to appear, because they weren't sure if he was still alive, or simply hadn't reached the moment of his death yet. To those who glimpsed him, he was more than a madman. He was a reminder that not everyone walks through time the same way. But what does it truly mean to live backwards? One way to understand it is as a metaphor. To know the future is to remember what hasn't happened yet. It's not sight, it's memory arriving early. But there's a darker meaning too. Those who see too much are often broken by it. Carrying the full weight of time inside one's mind can split it apart. Many cultures echo this pattern. In shamanic ritual, in shamanic traditions, initiates symbolically die and return with new sight, cut loose from the flow of ordinary time. Myrddin and Merlin fits this shape perfectly. He abandoned his name, his home, and his place among people. He returned as something else entirely. And beneath it all runs an older current. The ancient Indo-European idea that time is a circle, not a line. To the Celts, life and death were part of a cycle that endlessly repeated. If you lived inside that wheel, walking backwards would not be madness. It would simply mean walking the other way around it. Some modern mystics even claim Merlin represents timelessness itself. A man who stepped outside cause and effect, existing at once at the beginning and the end. Whether or not it's true, it explains the cold strangeness in his story. He didn't just escape time, he escaped the meaning of it. And if he truly walked backwards through history, where does that path end? Centuries later, the Wild Prophet was rewritten. The first to reshape him was Geoffrey of Monmouth. In the 12th century, Geoffrey gathered fragments of older Welsh poetry and wove them into his Historia Regum Britanniae. It was here that Myrddin Wyllt was reborn as Merlinus, no longer the broken wild man of the forest, but a cunning prophet who whispered in the ears of kings and steered the fate of Britain. From there, later medieval romance writers carried the transformation further. They folded him into the glittering courts of Arthurian legend, polishing away the madness and erasing the woods. The man who once muttered riddles to wolves became the man who planned Camelot. The eerie notion of living backwards faded from the tale. He was no longer the madman walking out of time. He was a wise counsellor rooted firmly within it. Yet the echo never fully died. In the 20th century, T.H. White revived it in The Once and Future King, reshaping Merlin as a man who lives from the end of history to its beginning, remembering the future as if it had already passed. It is fantasy, yes, but like all great fantasy, it preserves a shard of something older. It reminds us that the first Merlin was not comforting, he was terrifying, because he didn't seem to belong to time at all. Merlin is remembered as the wise architect of Camelot, yet his oldest shadow is stranger. A wild prophet who spoke of centuries yet to come as if he had already lived them. Maybe he never truly lived backwards. Maybe he simply stood too far outside of time, and the only way people could understand it was to say he did. What this story leaves behind is a warning. The more you see of the future, the harder it becomes to live in the present. If this changed how you see Merlin, subscribe and tell us. Do you think he truly lived backwards? Or was that just the only way to explain his impossible gift? Perhaps Merlin didn't conquer time. Perhaps he simply reached the end, and has been watching us catch up ever since, waiting, patient as stone, at the edge of history.